After Israel targeted the Jenin refugee camp in the West Bank, the BBC finally gave an Israeli politician a tough interview. This is Anjana Gajil speaking to former Israeli Prime Minister Naftali Bennett.
We're joined now by the former Israeli Prime Minister Naftali Bennett from Jerusalem. Good evening and thank you for joining us.
Good to be here, Anjana.
First of all, the Israeli military are calling this a military operation, but we now know that young people are being killed, 4 of them under 18. Is that really what the military set out to do, to kill people between the ages of 16 and 18?
Quite the contrary. Actually, all 11 people dead there are militants. The fact that there's young terrorists that decide to hold arms is their responsibility. Look, at the end of the day, over the past year or so, we've had over 50 Israelis murdered, in many cases by terrorists that were sent from Jenin camp, armed, trained, and sent to kill and murder Israelis in Tel Aviv, Jerusalem, and across Israel. And Jenin has become an epicenter of terror. So we, unfortunately, had to enter this hornet's nest of terror and neutralize the terror. Otherwise, they're going to continue killing us. So in fact, all the Palestinians that were killed are terrorists in this case.
Terrorists, but children. The Israeli forces are happy to kill children.
You know, it's quite remarkable that you'd say that because they're killing us. Now, if there's a 17-year-old Palestinian that's shooting at your family, Anjana, what is he?
Under your definition, you are calling them terrorists. The UN are calling them children.
No, I'm actually asking you, what would you call a 17-year-old person with a rifle shooting at your family and murdering your own family? How would you define that person?
We're not talking about that. The UN
That's
has
exactly
defined them as
about.
children. The UN has defined them as children, and we know that 4 people between the ages of 16 and 18 have been killed in this targeted attack. Let's not forget it's a targeted attack. The Israeli forces are going in looking
these are
for
terrorists.
these people.
I'm missing something. You know, a 17-year-old terrorist can murder civilians. There's a fundamental difference between what they're doing, which is explicitly and deliberately targeting civilians, and what we're doing, which is targeting terrorists. That's exactly the opposite. We're doing the right thing. They're killing civilians. And the fact that you're creating this moral equivalent or even worse, I think it's unacceptable.
That was a tough interview, which I think is warranted when speaking to a politician who supports a 50-year-long illegal occupation. But the nature of the questioning meant the BBC would soon find itself under attack, including from the Board of Deputies. So they released this statement. "We are appalled by comments made by a BBC presenter during an interview with former Israeli Prime Minister Naftali Bennett. The comments made, including the charge that Israel forces are happy to kill children when discussing armed terrorists under the age of 18, is simply disgraceful. This is a clear breach of the corporation's own editorial guidelines, and we will be contacting the Director General personally to protest in the strongest possible terms." And the BBC buckled. So they've released this statement. BBC News has received comments and complaints concerning an interview with Naftali Bennett broadcast on the BBC News channel about recent events in the West Bank and Israel. The complaints raised relate to specific interview questions about the deaths of young people in the Jenin refugee camp. Across the BBC's platforms, including our news channel, these events have been covered in an impartial and robust way. The United Nations raised the issue of the impact of the operation in Jenin on children and young people. While this was a legitimate subject to examine in the interview, we apologise that the language used in this line of questioning was not phrased well and was inappropriate. The Palestinian ambassador to the UK has now responded to that apology. He tweeted this: "So far, Israel has killed 35 children this year, and 160 Palestinian children are currently in Israeli prisons. Yet the BBC has to apologise for asking about that. And the BBC doesn't have to apologise for describing Palestinians as terrorists." Now, I think that's a really, really good point by the ambassador. We've had him on the show before, very, very articulate guy. Because in that clip, you might say, is the Israel army happy to kill children, is somewhat inflammatory. It's a question, by the way. So often you put questions in inflammatory terms to sort of elicit a response. But so is it inflammatory to just call Palestinians terrorists, right? Which the host also did. And I haven't seen I got called up for that. I don't see any apology from the BBC. Now, you might be saying, why is it inflammatory to say these people are terrorists if they are militants and they were found with guns? I don't know if they were found with guns, but even if they were militants, let's say. And the reason it's not uncontroversial to call a Palestinian militant a terrorist is because if you are under a legal occupation, then you do have the right to resist that occupation by any means necessary, right? Still, there's, you can commit war crimes even if you're under occupation, right? So it doesn't give you carte blanche to do anything. But if what you do is take action against an Israeli soldier, for example, you're going to get called a terrorist by the Israeli government. The BBC might repeat that you're a terrorist, but in international law, it's pretty unclear whether or not you're a terrorist, right? You might be a combatant just as the person you've gone after is a combatant. But that goes without passing because I suppose the Palestinians don't have representation in such a way that they can sort of make the BBC change their mind on these kind of things.
Michael, it's a classic example of what's called in public relations the electric fence. And the Zionist lobby, that's what it is. There's a lobby, there's an organized lobby with regards to pro-Israel advocacy in the United States. AIPAC, very clear. It's not a conspiracy theory. We should talk about it very clearly and concisely and choose our words, but that's what it is. They have created a litany of organizations whose entire raison d'etre is to effectively shape media discourse. Now, one way they do this is through, like I say, the electric fence approach to public relations, where they make the costs of covering Israel, Palestine in a certain way prohibitively high. Now, let me just explain how this works. I actually did a great video about this. People should watch it over on the Novara Media YouTube channel. There is a book by a gentleman called Nick Davies, Flat Earth News. Here's a quote from that book. The BBC has been the subject of Honest Reporting's attention more frequently than most. Now, Honest Reporting is one of these advocacy organizations. As one source told a Guardian journalist, Nick Davies, and this is from the book, if the editor of the Today program knows that an item will make the phone ring off the hook, he may think twice about running it. So what you see here, Michael, with regards to this particular case is, like you say, a BBC journalist asking a very robust and fair question. Okay, you've killed people involved in, they're shooting people, right? This is what seems to be the case, who are under 18. Are you happy with that? Perfectly legitimate, fair question. He is entitled to give a robust response. But what you see here instead is we have to raise the costs prohibitively high so no BBC journalist, reporter talks in these terms. And you see it with regards to, say, Dua Lipa, or you see it with regards to any celebrity like Mark Ruffalo expressing support for Palestine. If there's even something that people like Honest Reporting can get them on, or We Believe in Israel in this country, led by a bunch of people, but one of the central people working for them is one Luke Akehurst, who's a very powerful man inside the UK Labour Party. If they can get them on something, they ratchet that dial up so high. They make such an example of these people. They think, you know what? I probably won't comment on Israel again. Another example is with Bella Hadid on Instagram. She just had the temerity of making some comments on this stuff. All in. So this is the electric fence, Michael. And what's really astonishing here is, look, it's one thing to have professional media advocacy organizations like Honest Reporting on this. That's their job. But then you have organizations like the Board of Deputies. Now, the Board of Deputies will tell people like you and I, Michael, when we're covering anti-Semitism in the Labour Party, they would say it's outrageous that certain people are equating British Jews with Israel. I agree. You shouldn't do that. It's horrific. It's horrendous. And yet we have the British Board of Deputies, whose job is meant to represent Jewish opinion in this country. It should be said that the deputies themselves are elected. And it constantly seeks to shape how the BBC is covering Israel. Now, it seems a bit strange to me and somewhat two-faced to say you can't conflate British Jews with Israel and its foreign policy or domestic policy choices, but at the same time, we're going to make consistent interventions in how you talk about Israel at the British Broadcasting Corporation. It seems rather odd, doesn't it? So this is an approach. I've tried to identify it as clearly as I can, and people should see it for what it is. It's very effective, by the way.